Just hand me the house key. I'm trying to keep this simple. Evan held out his like he was asking to pass the salt. Claire lingered just inside the open front door, smiling like she already belonged there. Nia still had her overnight tote on one shoulder, the strap digging in, and her fingers held onto the key ring a beat too long. By the time the last guest drifted off, the driveway had gone quiet except for the soft shuffle of cleanup inside. Nia still had her overnight tote on one shoulder, the strap digging in, when Evan held out his palm and asked for the house key like he was asking her to pass the salt. Claire lingered just inside the open front door, relaxed and smiling, like she was already supposed to be there. Lindsay kept busy with napkins and empty glasses, looking anywhere but at them. Evan said he was just trying to keep things simple. Nia looked down at the key ring in her hand. Her fingers held on a second too long. Then she dropped it into his palm. The metal clicked against his watch. Nobody said a word. Nia stood there in a pressed white tee and dark jeans, watching him close his hand around the key to the house she had just walked out of. Kendra's spare room was so small Nia had to turn sideways to get her tote past the bed. Toy bins sat under the window. Folded laundry spilled off a chair, and a child-size air mattress was already laid out on the floor, like it had been waiting for somebody to need it. Nia set her bag beside the mattress and a stack of unpaid envelopes on the dresser. Before she could even sit down, Kendra was clearing half a chair with one hand and asking with the other if Nia could handle Malik's pickup tomorrow. Just tomorrow. She had a double shift. She wasn't trying to make it a thing. Malik leaned against Nia's leg, sleepy and warm, and Kendra kept her smile light like that made the ask easier. It didn't. The fridge was covered with daycare numbers, a shut-off notice, and a crayon-marked weekly schedule, all of it staring back at her. Nia said yes to fast, because refusing family in front of Malik would have felt worse. The model apartment still looked perfect from the doorway. Nia had just reset the console and softened the room when the property manager walked through, and nodded like he was seeing something easy. Then his eyes landed on the old Mercer home card sitting beside her work, and the whole thing tilted. He assumed the rush vacancy would go through Evan because his old staging number answered first, then asked Nia if she could even get to the bins at his house today. A leasing coworker heard it, winced, and looked down at the copier instead of jumping in. Maintenance radios crackled in the hall. Copier toner hung in the air. Nia's coffee from the desk had already gone cold. She kept her voice even and told him the look in the room was hers, not Evan's. But he was still talking as if the bins and the brand belonged to the man with the louder name. Nia picked up the old card, held it a beat too long, and set it back down again. When Nia came back for clothes and work supplies, Claire opened the door in socks like she was the one who lived there. Steam drifted up from Nia's chipped mug in her hand, and Nia's old slippers were on her feet. The kitchen island was covered with drop cloths, sample paint cans, and a grocery bag of takeout, like the whole place had settled around somebody else's afternoon. A handyman passed the hallway carrying a lamp and slowed when he saw Nia standing at the threshold. Claire smiled and waved Nia inside, then started explaining where things had been moved, talking fast and light, like she was being helpful. Nia looked at the mug, then at the slippers, and went very still. She had to steady her breathing before she answered, because anything she said right then would have come out colder than a shout. Claire kept going anyway, as if brightness could make the theft look normal. In a living room she had designed, Nia reached for a clear storage bin full of folded throws and paint swatches. Evan got there first. His hand closed over the plastic and held it in place like he was talking about a filing cabinet, not the tools she had paid for and packed by hand. These need to stay with the listing package, he said, calm as anything. Claire hovered nearby with that fixed little smile she used when she wanted to look harmless, and the handyman suddenly became very interested in the floor. The labels on the bin were Nia's own handwriting, so were the zip ties, the command strips, the staging candles tucked inside. Nia looked at the bin, then at Evan's hand, and for one ugly second her eyes filled before she flattened her face again. He didn't need to fight with her. He just stood there and acted like what she built had always been his to keep. At the apartment pickup line, Lindsay came in with a glossy brunch flyer for Kendra and a smile that never quite landed on Nia. She made a point of talking about Claire's lemon bars, then kept right on stepping around Nia like she was part of the scenery. It was all soft voice and neat little details, the kind of thing that sounds harmless until you feel what it's doing. Other parents caught the shift and went quiet. Kendra laughed too fast, too bright. Malik stood close to Nia with his backpack dragging low. watching the grown-ups with that tired little look kids get when they know something is off. The flyer never reached Nia's hand. Lindsay had already decided where everybody fit, and she was acting like that was just planning. Nia took the flyer back with one hand and smoothed the bent corner with her thumb. Then she handed it right back. Her voice stayed low. "Don't call it awkward," she said. "You wanted it easy." That was all it took. Lindsay's grin slipped. A couple of the parents suddenly found the pavement interesting. Kendra looked sick, because she knew exactly what Nia meant, exactly how much it cost to say it out loud. Nia didn't raise her voice. Lindsay had been trying to make exclusion sound like scheduling, and Nia had just named it for what it was. A choice, a comfortable one. She turned away before anybody could drag it into a bigger scene. But the air had already changed. Kendra caught her at the apartment doorway before Nia could even set her bag down. She was already half in her scrubs, talking fast, one hand on Malik's backpack and the other reaching for Nia's sleeve. She said it like it was small. Could Nia keep Malik overnight? Just this once. She had a double shift. She didn't want drama. But Malik was already leaning into Nia's leg, and the look on his face made it feel impossible to say no out loud. The dead phone charger sat on the counter beside microwavable Mac cups and a mess of wrappers. All the little signs of a life that always needed one more favor. Nia looked at Malik, then at Kendra, and the no that formed in her mouth never made it out. She heard herself agree before she could find a cleaner answer. The sample board was still untouched when Nia got to Tasha's suite, and the client was already halfway out the door. An empty chair sat beside a spread of swatches, and Malik stood there clutching crackers, crumbs all over his shirt. The woman gave Nia a polite apology like she'd just missed a train. Tasha took one look at the scene and knew exactly what had happened. So did Malik. Nia forced the kind of smile that hurts to hold, said it was fine, and turned her face away fast before her son could catch the tears rising in her eyes. Her parking meter was already running out outside. Inside, the job was gone, and Tasha didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Lindsay came into Tasha's suite flushed and out of breath, carrying a centerpiece from the Mercer house that had one side drooping lower than the other. She reached for the cream runner and the rental bins like she could just grab the whole thing and fix it later. But Tasha kept the good pieces out of reach. The room got quiet in that way it does when everybody knows a social mistake is about to turn into a real one. Lindsay had to say it plain. She needed Nia to reset the Mercer dining room before the brokers arrived. She needed her now. Nia looked at the crooked centerpiece, then at Lindsay's face, and there was no sweetness left in her voice when she answered. "I can do the job," she said, "but this is work." Lindsay swallowed hard and asked her directly anyway. Nia took the assignment on those terms and those terms only. At Lindsay's broker brunch, Evan was standing centered beside the stage dining setup like he had built the whole thing himself. Claire smiled at his elbow while he told the agent she had been great on the finishing touches, that she had really helped pull the room together. Nia was working nearby on Tasha's table, paint swatch deck tucked under her hand, and she knew the look he was pointing to. It was hers. The agents nodded because the story sounded smooth. Lindsay beamed like she was proud of the room and the man in it. Tasha went still. Nobody said the quiet part out loud, but it sat in the air anyway. Evan had just handed Claire the credit for Nia's work, and he said it with the kind of calm that makes people want to thank him for being civil. When one of the agents said the room felt warm, Claire started to answer, and Nia didn't even look up all the way. She reached over, straightened a crooked candle, and said, "The warmth comes from the bulbs by the front window. If you keep the cold ones in, the color goes flat." It was one small detail, but it changed the whole room. The agent looked from Claire to Nia. Lindsay's smile stopped moving. Evan had to stand there and watch everybody compare them for one clean beat. Nia didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. The room had already done the talking for her, and that was hard to swallow if you were counting on her to stay invisible. After the brunch, Evan showed up on Kendra's landing with the wrong table runner and mismatched candle holders from the Mercer dining room, like he was holding proof he didn't understand. The hall was tight and warm from Kendra's boxed noodles, and the stroller by the door made him look even more out of place. He asked Nia, "How did you get it this warm?" "The photos are tomorrow," and Claire reset the room wrong. Kendra froze when she saw the pieces in his hands. Malik leaned around Nia's leg to look, then went quiet. Evan was still trying to sound calm, but his voice was thinning out at the edges because now everybody in the family could see he needed her. Not the idea of her, the exact work, the exact eye. the exact thing he had just tried to hand to somebody else. From just inside Kendra's doorway, with the baby gate latched behind Malik and a cartoon blanket wrapped around him, Nia kept one hand on his shoulder and looked at Evan standing out in the hall, like he still had a right to call the shots. He was holding on to the same easy tone he used whenever he wanted to sound reasonable. He asked her to come over and sort the bins, as if that kind of work still belonged to her by default. Nia didn't go soft. She told him no. Then she told him she was not coming over to clean up a mess he had already decided was his. Evan's voice tightened right away. Kendra went still beside the fridge, like the whole floor had tipped. Malik felt the shift even without the words and clung closer to Nia's leg. She stayed inside the doorway when she shut the door. Her eyes were wet, but she did not follow him. At Kendra's apartment doorway, Donna came in with a covered casserole dish and that church smile look. That always made her sound kinder than she was. She didn't ask if Nia had time. She just said, "Claire will be at Sunday dinner, and everybody needs to be gracious about it." Kendra hovered behind Nia, pretending to straighten Malik's things, and Donna kept talking like the plan was already settled. She said family had to move forward. She said no one wanted more attention. Nia didn't answer right away. She just went still. The casserole was warm in Donna's hand, but the room felt cold anyway. That was the whole trick with Donna. She could hand you food and make it feel like a demand. After Donna left, the apartment still smelled like her casserole. Kendra shoved the dish into the fridge between leftovers and lunch containers and kept talking without stopping to breathe. She told Nia she had to go Sunday, had to smile, had to keep the whole thing from getting weird for everybody. She kept bringing up Malik as if that made the ask kinder. It didn't. Malik dragged his blanket through the kitchen and stopped by the fridge, sleepy and quiet. On the door, the daycare schedule sat beside the utility bills, with a bus pass tucked under a magnet. Kendra wasn't really asking. She was leaning on the same thing everybody else kept leaning on. Nia's fear of making family harder than it already was. Nia saw it clearly now. Kendra wanted peace, but she wanted access more. Nia came in with dessert and stopped because Claire was already coming out of the kitchen, with Donna's silver tray, balanced in both hands, smiling like that room had always been hers to work in. Roast chicken and onions hung in the air, with church heels by the door and voices in the hall. Donna took Nia's pie plate without pausing. She said Claire had been helping her finish up. Like that explained everything. A cousin started fussing with napkins and looked away. Evan stayed in his chair, easy in the middle of the room, like none of it was strange. Claire kept that bright little smile in place and stayed close to Donna. Tray and all, Nia tightened her hands around the pie plate until her knuckles went pale. The kitchen had already been handed off, and nobody in the room acted like it was strange. The place cards were set out in Donna's neat handwriting, little verdicts waiting on the table. Claire's card sat beside Evan's wine glass. Nia's was pushed all the way to the corner near Malik's booster seat, right next to a mismatched juice cup. Donna moved around the table like she was only organizing dinner, staring everybody toward their names as if rank was just a matter of good manners. Silverware paused in midair. A couple of relatives looked down to fast. Claire's smile was ready before anybody sat. Nia felt heat climb into her face because the message was plain without anyone speaking it. Claire got the couple seat, Nia got the edge, and Donna expected everybody to call that courtesy. After settling Malik with Kendra, Nia lifted the little place card with her name on it, dragged an empty chair out from the end of the table, and carried it into the open seat the family had left for themselves. The scrape went through the room, heads turned. Donna froze with the serving spoon halfway to the bowl. Claire stopped smiling. Evan looked down at his plate like maybe the table would rearrange itself and spare him. Nia set her card down in front of her and sat, not on the edge, not by the child seat, right there with the adults. Nobody said a word, which made it worse. Eyes clicked in the tea glasses. The bread basket sat untouched between them. Nia kept her back straight, but under the table she was breathing a little too fast, like the whole move cost her more than she wanted anybody to see. Still, she stayed where she had put herself, by the fireplace. After the plates were cleared, Donna gathered everybody together for a family picture. She tucked Claire right against Evan and kept that soft smile on her face, the one that always made a hard thing look polite. Then she held the phone out to Nia and said she always took the best pictures. The whole room shifted around that handoff. Relatives squeezed in closer. Kendra looked trapped. Evan let it all stand because it made his version of the night look neat. Old holiday cards sat on the mantel behind them. Nia took the phone. and it felt like being put off to the side with a smile. Nia placed the phone into Kendra's hand and said somebody else could take the picture. Then she stepped out from the fireplace grouping, one shoulder turning away from the family pose Donna was trying to set. The room stalled. Claire's smile tightened. Donna's face hardened a beat later when she realized Nia was not coming back into place. Kendra looked down at the phone like it had suddenly gotten heavy. A couple of relatives stared at the floor. Nia kept walking. She didn't explain. She didn't raise her voice. She just stopped helping the picture happen. Kendra had Malik half buckled into his car seat when she turned back to Nia and started talking too fast. Donna is sensitive, she said. Everybody is going to get weird if you keep making moments like that. Then she pushed the bigger point through with the smaller one. Mercer Help was still Mercer Help, and Malik didn't need the family acting cold around him. Nia stood by the passenger door with the gaslight glowing on the dash, fries in the console, and a nearly empty pack of wipes beside her. She heard the trade the second it was offered. Be hurt later. Be easy now. Keep the peace so the same people who ranked you down can keep showing up for the child. Nia went quiet. It was an agreement. It was the sound of her realizing how little loyalty was left once convenience got scared. By the time they got to Lindsay's event space, Nia was pushing borrowed centerpiece bins up to the main entrance. Evan and Claire arrived almost at the same time, all easy smiles and polished clothes. Lindsay lit up when she saw them. She swept the couple through the front door with bright hostess warmth, then turned to Nia and her cart and pointed her toward the side vendor entrance, like that was where work belonged. The rolling cart stayed between Nia and the room. Vendor slowed. Tasha caught the whole split without saying a word. Claire walked in front as if she had every right to be there. Evan let it happen without blinking. Nia almost followed on reflex, then felt the stink settle all the way in. Front door for the couple. Side door for the woman who had made the place look right. Nia stopped with a box of centerpieces half open and kept one hand on the vendor board, while Lindsay hovered. Nia's business card pinched between her manicured fingers. Packing tape still clung to Nia's wrist. At her tote was already packed with the tools she needed for the rest of the room. She told Lindsay the room was not getting finished unless her name went on that board. As the designer, not extra hands. She didn't ask twice. She didn't soften it. The unfinished room waited behind them while Tasha watched without blinking. And the vendors kept moving but started. Listening, Lindsay looked from the board to Nia, then finally wrote designer beside her name. It wasn't generous. It wasn't pretty. It was public, and that was the point. When the mixer got going, Lindsay took the microphone and did what polished people do when they want to steal. Without sounding ugly, she praised Evan and Claire as the easy couple everybody knew, then thanked Nia like a friend who had helped with the decor tonight. Instead of naming her as the designer, the phrase landed soft and wrong. Nia's name card sat on the vendor board in the background, right where she had made Lindsay put it, around the bar. A few heads turned from the couple to Nia and back again. Tasha's face tightened. The guests heard the difference even if they didn't all say it. Friend, help, decor. That was how Lindsay tried to make a designer disappear while smiling at the room. Nia's face went cold because the line was to practice to mistake for anything else. As the mixer thinned out, Lindsay slid a serving tray toward Nia and started pointing at what still needed to be broken down, like cleanup was part of her job title. Nia set the tray back on the bar and picked up her structured tote instead. Claire fumbled with glasses she didn't know where they belonged. Evan watched without helping. A couple guests went quiet because they could feel the room losing the person who had been keeping it easy. Nia's phone buzzed with a rideshare alert. She didn't look down. She walked out and left the tray sitting there untouched. And for the first time all night the room had to deal with its own mess. Outside by the service door, Lindsay came after her with a bus tub of dirty champagne flutes sloshing against her arm. The bartender paused in the doorway. Tasha stood on the sidewalk with her arms folded. Inside the lit room, Claire hovered like she was waiting for somebody else to tell her what to do. Lindsay kept talking too fast, asking Nia to come back because she didn't know what belonged where, and the whole place was going to fall apart. Nia stood at the curb with her tote on one shoulder and a cracked phone in her hand. The rideshare app still refreshing. For a second she looked like she might turn around. Then she didn't. She left Lindsay standing there with the dirty glasses and kept walking. Before dawn, Donna was parked outside Kendra's building in her idling SUV, holding Malik's laminated aftercare placard out the window like it was nothing. Kendra stood on the sidewalk in scrubs and house shoes, tired enough to look past sleep. Nia was there too, Donna kept her voice soft and said it was probably best not to be in the middle right now. Then she handed the placard back through the window and drove off like that was peace. Malik lingered on the stoop in his hoodie, backpack hanging off one shoulder. Blinking at the morning, Kendra's face tightened because she already knew where this was headed. Nia saw it too. Donna had not just stepped out. She had pushed the burden straight onto the sisters and called it peace. At Tasha's suite, Malik was on the floor with crayons when the brand owner asked if Nia could pull together a last-minute pop-up for a local beauty brand. Nia said yes. She knelt over a pile of folded throws and borrowed stools, checking the spacing while Malik colored beside her sneakers. A kid's tablet hummed low from the salon chair Tasha had turned into a little kid corner. As fruit snacks sat within reach, Tasha watched Nia make the call without apologizing for it, then stepped back like she was looking at a working stylist, not a woman with family pressure hanging off both shoulders. That was the thing. Nia did the work anyway, under her own name, even with Malik right there and the rest of her day still trying to pull her somewhere else. For the next hour, this room was going to pay her. At the open house, the entry looked perfect at first glance, but the room felt cold in a way money couldn't hide. A broker stopped in the foyer and asked what had changed. Because the house didn't feel settled anymore, Evan kept his easy smile in place. Claire kept fluffing pillows that weren't fixing anything. Another agent glanced at the sign-in sheet, then back at the room like the answer should have been obvious. It wasn't. The grocery store cookies sat untouched on the white platter. Shoe covers lined the floor. Prospective buyers traded a look and stayed quiet. Nobody could say why the place suddenly fell off, but they all felt it. Nia wasn't there, and the house was telling on itself. Back at Tasha's suite mid-setup, Nia's phone kept lighting up with Evan's name. The voicemails came clipped and practical, like he was talking to the person who still knew how to make the house feel right. He wanted to know about the lighting, the entry flow, where she had kept the warmer bulbs, because the room was not reading right. Nia kept smoothing fabric with one hand and turned the phone face down with the other. She did not call back. She did not even pick it up. Tasha heard enough from one message to know exactly what he was doing, and she let Nia keep working without rescuing him. Malik asked for juice from the floor by her feet, and the phone kept buzzing against the edge of a folding table. Evan could sit in his polished mess and wait. At Tasha's suite, just as the brand owner came back for the final walkthrough, Kendra rushed in with Malik half asleep, an overnight bag on one arm, and a small pillow tucked under the other. Donna had backed out, she said, and her clocking window was closing before Nia could even answer. Kendra was already backing toward the door. Malik had a cafeteria milk mustache on his upper lip, and his bag landed by Nia's styling kit before she could move. The pillow landed on top of it. Malik clung to her leg like he already knew the answer. Tasha's face tightened. The brand owner paused, taking in the whole thing with one look. Kendra kept talking fast, trying to make it sound temporary and reasonable, but it was still a drop-off. Nia felt the day getting yanked out of her hands while everybody acted like she was supposed to smile through it. She swallowed the sharp answer sitting in her throat because Malik was right there. Without making a production of it, Tasha took Malik into the back office with snacks and a charger and shut the door behind him. Then she turned back to Nia and told her to finish the brand setup before the client lost the light. That was it. No speech, no guilt, just help that stayed in its lane. Kendra looked relieved and ashamed all at once, standing there in scrubs with her cracked phone in her hand. The brand owner saw enough to understand that Nia was still the person everybody's crisis bent toward. For a second, the relief hit Nia so hard it almost showed. Then she tucked it down and got back to work. Somebody had finally helped her hold the line instead of asking her to erase herself to keep it. After the pop-up corner was finished, the brand owner walked it slow, looking at the way Nia could make a room feel expensive without making it fussy. Then she handed over a plain envelope and asked if Nia could do the same thing for a small apartment shoot next week. Nia took the envelope with both hands for a second, like she had to make sure it was real. Tasha caught the look on her face and smiled to herself. Even Kendra, standing off to the side, could see the difference between somebody thanking Nia for being useful and somebody paying her because she was good. The client talked like a regular person, too, asking about delivery windows, budget limits, and apartment sizes. It was just Nia's work under her own name, and a little money in her hand to prove it. Nobody else got to speak for her this time. At Evan's open house before dusk, Claire had overstuffed the entry again. Soft beige pillows, a narrow bench, Too many pretty pieces copied from Nia's old style. Buyers kept bunching at the front door because nobody could get to the sign-in table without bumping the stroller wheel or moving the overstuffed basket by the console. A returning agent had to shove the basket aside just to clear a path. Claire kept smoothing the throw and smiling like that would make the room work. Evan kept his easy face in place too, but it was thinning. The stroller wheel kept catching on the rug, and buyers started exchanging looks instead of pretending everything was fine. Outside Tasha's suite after closing, Evan waited by Nia's car with 2 coffees and a photo of the house glowing on his phone. He didn't come in with that easy owner voice this time. He came soft, careful, almost cautious. He said the clients had noticed the difference and asked if she could just walk one property with him. Just one. Tasha watched from the suite door and did not step in. That made the ask feel even more dangerous, because now Evan sounded like a man trying to talk his way back through a door he had already shut behind her. Nia looked at the cups, then at the room on his phone. Same house, same clean lines, same polished story. The only thing missing was her, and he knew it. That was what made his voice so gentle. He was asking for the thing he had spent all this time pretending didn't matter. Nia stood by her car and let him finish. Then she handed the coffee back untouched and told him she wasn't walking another property for him. Not after he'd already decided what belonged to him. The words stayed calm, but they landed hard. Tasha turned her face away just enough to give her space, and Evan's expression moved through hope, hurt, and annoyance before it settled into that clipped look he wore when he wasn't getting his way. Malik's overnight bag was still in the back seat, and the long day showed all over Nia's face. She did not reach for the phone. She did not soften it. She just held the line and left him standing in the parking lot with the coffee and the problem. For once, the room was going to stay wrong without her fixing it. The next morning at Tasha's suite, Claire showed up bright as ever with Nia's old living room on her phone. She held the picture up like a shopping reference and asked where she could find the same throw, the same lamp, the same little tray mix that had made the Mercer den feel warm. Tasha went still the second she saw the screen. A waiting client looked from Claire to Nia and back again, slow enough to understand the problem without anybody spelling it out. Claire kept smiling, like she was being helpful, like she wasn't standing there trying to buy the feel of a life she had not built. That was what made it ugly. She wasn't even pretending the look was hers. She was asking Nia to point her to the parts so she could wear the whole thing, like it belonged to her. Nia looked at the phone, then at Claire, and the hurt and anger hit together so fast she had to steady herself before she answered. At Tasha's suite doorway, the morning after Claire arrived with Nia's old living room photo, Claire stood smiling with her phone up and started asking where Nia had gotten the throw, the lamp, and the tray mix that made the Mercer den feel warm. Nia didn't move. Tasha went still behind the desk, and the waiting client kept looking between the two women like she could feel the disrespect. Without needing the rest of the story, Claire kept that bright voice on, like she was just asking about curtains. But she wasn't. She was trying to make Nia turn her own life into a source list. Nia looked at the phone once and told her no. She wasn't breaking it down for her. The smile stayed on Claire's face a second long after that. Then it tightened. At the neighborhood home boutique, Claire came and loaded down with beige pieces and that same room photo on her screen. The owner didn't even look at the phone at first. She started asking the real questions. What was the wall tone? How big was the room? Where did people actually walk when they came in? Claire stalled on everyone. Nia was there for her own client job, pulling a fabric swatch ring and checking a lamp against the window light. And the owner turned past Claire and looked straight at her for the answer. The women browsing by the lamp wall slowed down to listen. That was enough. Claire's confidence started to look rented. Nia wasn't doing anything dramatic. She was just answering in a way that made sense. And the owner heard it. In a room full of pretty things, the person who understood how the room worked was the one people started trusting. Before Claire could recover, a condo manager came in to pick up the last of the poles for a small preview unit. The boutique owner said Nia had the eye for it and didn't bother lowering her voice. Then the manager put the unit key fob right into Nia's hand instead of sending anything through Evan, or anybody tied to him. Claire was still standing there with copied pillows tucked against her ribs. Nia looked down at the key like she needed a second to believe it, then closed her fingers around it. The manager told her to make the space feel right and left it at that. Just Nia being trusted in front of everybody in the room. Claire had to stand there and watch somebody else hand Nia the part she had been trying to wear. By the curb outside Tasha's suite, Nia was loading runners and candle holders into her trunk for the condo preview when Claire pulled up smiling to hard. She said Donna's church women coffee needed to look right in the Mercer house and asked if she could borrow the nicer pieces just for the day. Tasha was standing in the doorway with her arms folded. Malik was nearby with a juice pouch swinging from his hand. Nia looked into the open styling bin, then back at Claire. Those pieces were already spoken for, already tied to a paying job. Claire kept her hand hovering over the bin like she could make the answer bend if she stayed friendly long enough. Nia shut it down. She closed the trunk and said no. Not this time. Claire's smile stayed on her face, but it went tight around the edges before she even drove off. At Donna's house, the church women were already settling in with foam cups and slices of bundt cake when Claire's version of the room got in the way. She had candles, flowers, and beige serving pieces lined across the island so thick nobody could set anything down without moving something first. One of the older church women slid the centerpiece aside with 2 fingers and put her pound cake right where it needed to go. Then she poured her coffee and kept talking like nothing had happened. The whole room relaxed the second the pretty stuff stopped blocking it. Donna held her smile and said nothing. The other women exchanged that quick look older women give each other when they know a room is trying too hard. Claire kept fluffing and adjusting, but the gathering had already decided it did not need her version to function. While Nia was halfway out of her work clothes in Kendra's narrow hallway, Kendra came up holding Donna's empty cake stand in both hands. She wanted to know where the matching pedestal and brass sleeves were, because Claire's table still looked off and Donna kept saying Nia was the one who knew how to make it feel finished. Malik was on the floor tying one sneaker. The shoe rack was overfull. A grocery tote sat on the radiator. Nia looked at that cake stand and felt the old pull to fix it before she even answered. But this was the same family that had let her get pushed to the side in the first place. So she just stood there, quiet, while Kendra held the thing that proved Claire's version still wasn't finished without Nia. Nia finished closing the styling bin before she said anything else. Then she left the cake stand in Kendra's hands and told her, calm as anything, that if Donna wanted the table to feel right, she could stop asking the wrong woman to wear the place. Kendra's face changed fast, hurt first, then offense. Malik looked up because he could hear the difference in Nia's voice, even if he didn't know the details. The phone in Nia's pocket started buzzing with a reminder about her client arrival window, and she didn't reach for it. She didn't grab the pedestal. She didn't give them the missing sleeves or the words to make Claire's table look finished. She just shut the bin, kept her own work, and stood there letting the silence sit on them. That was the answer. Nia had already said no. Inside the condo sample unit before the preview, Nia looked the room over for a second, then moved. She shifted the entry bench 2 inches, swapped the blue-white bolt for a warmer one, and cleared half the accessories out of the sightline. The room changed right away. It opened. The photographer lowered his camera and said there it was. The condo manager's shoulders dropped like he could finally breathe. A folding steamer sat by the wall. Bottled water warmed on the counter. A grocery store orchid leaned by the sink. Nia didn't explain a thing. She just let the room do the talking. By the time Lindsay came into the finished condo unit with a local sponsor and a woman scouting spaces for a small lifestyle feature, the room had already made up its mind. The condo manager kept looking at Nia. Lindsay saw it and changed her tone fast. She introduced Nia as the stylist before anybody could make her into help. She had to say it out loud in front of people she wanted to impress. Nia took the introduction without smiling too hard. Her business card sat right there beside the sign-in bowl. The sponsor and the feature scout turned toward her at once, and Lindsay could feel the room deciding who mattered faster than she could control it. During the walkthrough, Evan showed up with Claire and a relocating couple he thought he could impress. But once they stepped inside, the couple barely looked at either of them. They started asking Nia about the light, the flow, and why the place felt calmer than the square footage said it should. Claire stood there polished and ready. Evan kept that easy sales smile on his face. None of it landed. The questions went straight to Nia. She answered them like the knowledge belonged in her own mouth. Because it did. Lindsay watched the shift and couldn't stop it. The condo manager let it happen. Claire hovered near a pillow she no longer controlled the meaning of, while the couple kept turning back to Nia for the answers that actually fit the room. At the condo preview, the relocating woman said the unit felt bigger than it was, and Claire jumped right in, smiling about the pale palette and the soft throws like that was the whole story. Nia reached out and touched the bench by the entry. Then she said, quiet and exact, that the room only felt calm because the path stayed clear and the bench sat off to the side. So people stopped bunching up at the door. The couple looked back at the entry right away. Lindsay went silent. Even Evan had nothing easy to say over a detail the room had just proved for itself. Claire stood there holding a pillow that suddenly meant nothing. A folded stroller leaned by the wall. A diaper bag sat on the counter. Nia had said one practical thing, and the whole room had to admit she was the one who knew why it worked. As the walkthrough broke up, the feature scout stepped back to Nia instead of Evan and asked for her card. She wanted to talk about a small furnished rental and said she needed the woman who could make a room feel lived in, without making it look crowded. That was it. No big speech. Just somebody choosing Nia right in front of the people who had been trying to own the image around her. Evan had to keep his face still. Claire's brightness flickered. Lindsay saw it too. A business card changed hands directly to Nia, and the choice felt bigger than the room. It felt like proof that people were starting to trust her name on sight. At the broker breakfast in one of Evan's listings, he was halfway through a smooth little sales story, paper cup in hand, when another broker cut across him and asked if Nia was doing any of his units again. Said the condo preview finally had the warmth his houses had been missing. The table went quiet in that professional way where nobody wants to be the first to react. A few of the agents glanced at Evan, then back at one another, like they were all doing the math in real time. Evan held his smile, but it had to be held now. The muffins were still wrapped in plastic. Flyers and cheap creamer sat on the folding table like the room hadn't just shifted under him. He had to answer instead of gliding past it, and for the first time in that circle, nobody was treating his version of the story like the only one that mattered. By the time Nia got back to the leasing desk, somebody was there asking for her by name. A furnished rental owner said the condo manager told her Nia was the one who could make a small place feel lived in, instead of just staged. The keys slid across the counter toward Nia while her co-worker watched it happen. Behind the owner, the resident line kept growing with package slips, maintenance requests, and a toddler fussing in a stroller. Nia took the referral with steady hands, but you could still see the surprise in her face. Not because the praise was loud, because it was direct. Nobody was routing around her. Nobody was calling her the wife of anything. The owner wanted Nia. Her co-worker had to adjust to that on the spot. For once, her value was moving through the room under her own name. Outside church after service, Donna stood in her pearls with a return cake stand in her hands while a church woman smiled and said she had gotten Nia's number from somebody, because the condo unit had the same calm the Mercer house used to have before everything got so fussy. Donna didn't have a clean way to answer that. She just kept her church smile in place and held the cake stand a little tighter. Kendra was standing right there beside Nia, and she was still the second she heard it. That wasn't family talk. That was somebody outside the family saying the truth like it was nothing to hide. Kids were running toward the fellowship hall. Paper fans kept folding and unfolding. Donna couldn't dress that up as timing or peace or good manners. It landed. Nia felt both things at once, too. Vindicated, exposed, like the truth had finally reached the right ears, but not without dragging old hurt with it. Donna came up the hallway with a tote full of table runners tucked against her hip. Still wearing that practiced Mercer smile, the hall was tight with laundry baskets. Malik's sneakers were kicked under the radiator. She asked Kendra if Nia could look over the runners for the women's retreat, like it was the kind of small favor nobody would question. Kendra took one hand off the doorframe, but she didn't take the tote. She kept it in Donna's hands and said Nia wasn't doing Mercer favors anymore. Simple, quiet. Donna's smile froze in place. Inside the apartment, Nia heard enough to stop moving. It hit her hard because it came from Kendra, and because it meant the family line had shifted right in the doorway. At Lindsay's event space, Nia came in carrying a sample board and headed straight for the front, expecting the side entrance she had been sent to before. Instead, Lindsay hurried to the door, opened it herself, and steered Nia into the main room where sponsors were waiting on the condo stylist. Floral buckets sat by the wall. Extension cords ran under folding chairs. Lindsay's smile was a little too bright, but she still had to say it out loud. This is Nia, the stylist. Not a helper, not a friend who was lending a hand. The actual stylist. Sponsors and vendors caught the change immediately. Nia walked through the front door with her board in hand and didn't have to flatten herself to fit. Lindsay had no room left to push her aside. The old side door treatment felt far away. like somebody else's habit. Everybody in that room saw who was being centered now. Inside the sponsor consult room, Evan was deep into his pitch. One hand hooked over the back of a chair, Claire standing beside him in soft, polished ease. Then the seller cut across him and asked if Nia could walk her furnished rental. Before she made any decisions, she said she'd heard enough about the warmth in Nia's rooms to know who she trusted. Claire's smile tightened. Lindsay started fussing with place cards she didn't need to touch. The room went quiet in that professional way that means everybody heard the same thing. Evan kept talking for a beat too long, but nobody was looking at him anymore. The seller had already turned her body toward Nia, not to be polite, to choose the woman whose work actually held up in real life. The next day, the furnished rental still smelled like cleaning solution. The owner started in on how she just needed a little touch, something like the one Nia had given Evan's places, and she hoped it could be quick and cheap. Nia didn't reach for the lockbox. She named her consult fee, her styling rate, and the deposit first, then held the key in the owner's palm until the woman nodded. The owner blinked, checked her phone full of turnover photos and budget notes, then agreed. The referral had already done its work. She knew Nia was worth paying. Nia took the key only after the terms were clear. No apology, no pretending her labor was just a nice extra. Midway through the walkthrough, Kendra came in fast, still in scrubs, the school nurse crackling through the speakerphone to say Malik was waiting in the office. Kendra pushed Malik's pickup card and her car keys toward Nia, like she was supposed to leave the client standing there and go solve it. The rental owner heard every word. Nia looked at the card, then took Kendra's hand and folded her fingers back around it. She didn't get loud. She didn't make it a scene. She just put the responsibility back where it belonged. Kendra stared at her own hand like she couldn't believe Nia wasn't taking the hit for her. Malik was still on the line. Nia hated hearing that part, but she stayed put. That was the whole point. At the finished rental, turnover towels and fresh soap bars were waiting in the bathroom while the owner and the featured scout walked the room. With a small notebook between them, a plug-in air freshener clicked in the hall. Evan came in like he was just checking on the listing, smiling that easy smile, and started talking over the work. He told them Nia and he used to do this kind of thing together, like her hands had just been part of the team. Nia stood between him and the room and said it plain. He sold the units. I built the rooms. The owner went still. The scout stopped writing. Evan's smile stayed on his face a beat too long, and nobody rushed to cover for him. Nobody hurried to make his version sound better. Nia had said the part everyone kept trying to skip, and the room had to sit with it. After hours, Nia wheeled labeled bins out of Kendra's trunk and into the small storage bay behind Tasha's suite. Dusty folding chairs leaned against one wall. Spare hair boxes were stacked by a humming mini fridge. Bottled water cases sat on the floor like they belonged there. Because now they did. Tasha handed over the extra key without making a speech. Kendra stood in the doorway a little late, watching Nia close the metal gate on her own things. That was the part that landed, not the bins, not the key. The fact that her work finally had a place that answered to her. Nia locked it and held the key a second longer than she needed to. No family overflow, no Mercer reach, just her tools, and a door that stayed shut. In Tasha's back storage room, cases of bottled water, braiding hair boxes, moving blankets, and a rattling hand truck made the space feel practical and hard-earned while Nia loaded book client pieces onto a dolly. Evan and Claire showed up together and asked to borrow the brass candle holders and the runner for a lifestyle shoot at the Mercer house the next day. Claire kept her voice light. Evan kept his tone practical, like he was asking for something already agreed on. Nia didn't open the gate wide. She slipped the padlock through, snapped it shut, and kept the key in her fist while she told them the inventory was booked. That was all. Tasha watched from the salon door, flat-faced and still, and a delivery driver waiting with floral buckets saw the whole thing. Evan and Claire stood on the wrong side of the gate holding nothing, with Nia's storage locked up between them and the help they thought they could still pull from her. At the furnished rental, fresh towels and a grocery store air freshener sat by the sink, and scuffed baseboards made the place feel lived in, not fancy. The owner was standing by the kitchen counter with the keys in one hand and turnover bins stacked by the wall when Nia said her earliest opening was next week. She said it without rushing herself, without trying to squeeze in a favor. The owner didn't blink. She set a deposit envelope down beside the key ring and said she'd rather wait for Nia than call Evan. The cleaner in the next room heard that and kept smoothing the fresh sheets, like she needed a second to take it in. It wasn't a big speech. It was a decision. Nia's appointment book stayed closed, and the owner waited like that was the sensible thing to do. Late that night, Kendra was standing in her pajamas in the cramped kitchen, with a stack of overdue utility envelopes in her hand, and Malik was asleep on the couch under a cartoon blanket. Nia's sample boards were leaning by the wall. The pot of instant noodles had gone cold on the stove, and Kendra's cracked phone kept buzzing on the counter. She looked at the mess, looked at Nia, and finally said it. If Nia had money for storage and time to tell everybody no, then she needed to be out by the weekend. This place could not keep carrying half help and half distance. Malik was right there breathing in sleep, and that made the words hit even harder. Kendra said it like shelter and loyalty were supposed to be the same thing. Nia didn't fire back. She just went quiet, and that quiet hurt more than a fight would have. The apartment was small and old, with cheap blinds hanging crooked and a window AC rattling in the corner. But it was quiet. Nia set her toad on the bare kitchen counter, while the property manager turned the key ring in his hand and said the unit was hers if she still wanted it. Her leasing co-worker stood off to the side, watching her face more than the room. Nia took the keys. Just like that, a folding table could fit here. Malik could visit here, and nobody in her family could make the place depend on her saying yes to their version of peace. She looked at the empty counter, at the chipped cabinet handle, and for a second her whole face changed. The keys steadied her. They also hit her hard, because freedom this late still came with grief. But she closed her hand around them anyway and accepted the kind of shelter nobody could take back. At Nia's new apartment doorway, Donna stood in the hall with the grocery store peace lily and that same gentle smile she always used when she wanted something without saying so. Half-packed boxes were stacked behind Nia, and unopened dish soap, flattened moving boxes, and a borrowed step stool made the place feel real and freshly claimed. Donna said Sunday would be easier if Nia would just stop by so people could see everyone was okay. Nia kept one hand on her own door and didn't open it any wider. She told Donna this plainly, "You can tell them I'm okay from here." The maintenance man carrying paint cans slowed at the end of the hall and looked over just long enough to understand what kind of no it was. Donna was still smiling, but now she was the one standing outside asking. Nia didn't raise her voice. She didn't explain herself. She just stayed where she was, in her own doorway, with the door closed enough to make the answer clear. The Mercer house looked expensive, but the room kept coming out wrong. Garment racks crowded the hall. Takeout coffee cups sat on every flat surface, and a wrinkled throw had slipped halfway down the stairs. The photographer kept asking them to strip half the setup because the picture still looked stiff. Claire reached for the wrong lamp, trying to fix it, and Evan snapped right there in front of Lindsay, Donna, and the crew. He told her to stop touching things she didn't understand. Claire froze with her hand still on the lamp. Lindsay's bright hostess face went flat. Donna stood in the doorway without moving. Even the photographer went quiet. And just like that, the polished version of Evan started to look thin and strained, like it only held together when somebody else was doing the invisible work. That evening, Evan was outside Nia's new apartment holding her chipped mug from the Mercer kitchen, like he could bring the old life back in one hand. He said he just wanted to talk. He said everything felt wrong. He said he missed how they used to steady each other. Nia stayed in her doorway with the new key still hanging on the inside deadbolt behind her. Half-packed boxes lined the wall, and a folding chair held takeout containers by the window. A neighbor carrying laundry slowed at the stairwell and looked over once, then kept moving. Evan softened his voice, but he was still asking for the same thing. Not a conversation, a way back in. Nia didn't take the mug. She didn't step closer. She told him, quietly, that the door was closed for a reason. The mug sat between them like an old habit neither of them could pretend was harmless anymore. He stood there with it. She stood there without him. The next morning, Nia was still half surrounded by boxes when Lindsay showed up with a feature scout, an mock-up board for a neighborhood small space showcase at the event space. The board had Nia's name on it. That was the first thing Nia looked at. Lindsay didn't come in loose and bright the way she used to. She kept her tone careful and asked if Nia would headline the event as the stylist. Everybody kept talking about. Tasha leaned in the doorway and watched Nia, not Lindsay. This wasn't somebody asking her to clean up a mess. This was somebody coming to her threshold and asking to center her. Nia looked at the board, then at the two women waiting on her answer, and said yes. Not because they needed saving, because this one finally came on her terms. Nia didn't wait for anybody to clear a path. She got both hands on the little demo table, dragged it out from the sidewall, and set her name placard down in the center aisle like it belonged there. The floor was crowded with gaff tape, deli coffee cups, folding chairs, and floral buckets. But she moved through it like she could already see the room she wanted. One sponsor shifted out of her way, then another. Lindsay watched from the edge and didn't stop her. Because once Nia started placing the table and the chairs around it, the whole room started taking its cues from her. Vendors began lining things up the way she pointed. Florists turned toward her without even thinking about it. For a second she looked surprised by her own calm. Like claiming center still felt new in her body, but she stayed there, behind her own name, and everybody else had to adjust around her. Before the guests came in, Kendra backed into the venue carrying one of Nia's labeled apartment boxes and a bundle of folded runners from her trunk. She set the box down beside Nia's placard and, for once, didn't start with excuses. She just asked where Nia wanted everything. No apology speech, no explaining. She lifted, unloaded, and waited for direction. Malik watched his mother help instead of ask, and Tasha saw the change right away. So did Lindsay. Nia looked at the box marked kitchen, then at Kendra's hands, and something in her face softened before she could hide it. It still hurt that the loyalty came this late, but it was real now. And this time Kendra was working on Nia's side of the room. Claire came slipping past the prep line with a travel mug in one hand, all bright smile and soft steps, and reached for the throw on Nia's main display like she was helping. Nia took it right back. No argument, no raised voice. She just held out a guest ribbon and said setup was closed. That was it. Claire looked down at the ribbon like it had insulted her. The vendors had gone quiet. Even the ones carrying lamps and rolling racks knew exactly what had just happened. Lindsay stood there and let it stand, which told Nia more than any apology would have. Claire was no longer in the back. She was no longer part of the work. She had been moved to the other side of the room. Whether she liked it or not, Nia kept the throw in the room behind her. Donna came in with two church women on either arm, pearls at her neck, and that polished smile still on her face. One of the women was waving a church bulletin fan against the heat, and soft church perfume and paper programs followed them in. The usual Sunday mix of covered dessert tins and quiet judgment. But this time Donna didn't walk around Nia. She stopped in front of the main display and pointed right at her. Said Nia Ellison was the stylist. Said she was the woman who designed the whole evening. The church women warmed up to Nia on the spot, like they could feel the difference between polite talk and the truth. Kendra heard it and went still. Donna heard herself too, which was almost a bigger thing. No softening, no little excuse, no sidestep into family language, just Nia's name, out loud, where everybody could hear it. Nia took it in without smiling too fast. It landed like relief and hurt at the same time, because hearing the truth late still counts as hearing it late. But it was out there now. Donna had said it, and the room knew who built it. Evan came in like he expected the room to open for him. Rolled sleeves, easy smile, that same confidence he used to wear like a key. Instead, the volunteer at the folding check-in table handed him a guest badge and a pen, and asked him to sign it while Nia was finishing with sponsors. A glass bowl for raffle cards sat right there beside the sign-in sheet. Ordinary and unbothered, Evan's smile held for a second, then slipped just enough for anybody paying attention to see it. Nobody rushed over to fix it. Nobody laughed like they used to. Guests kept talking by the drinks table, and the whole thing went on around him as if he were ordinary, which, in this room, he was just another man waiting his turn under Nia's name. The badge stuck to his blazer like an insult he couldn't smooth away. And for once, the room didn't need his version of himself to keep moving. Lindsay took the wireless mic with both hands and stepped off to the side, instead of planting herself in the middle. The room went quiet around her. Eyes clicked in plastic cups. A toddler fussed once and then settled against somebody's shoulder. Phones lifted for clips. Then Lindsay said Nia Ellison's name clear enough for everybody to hear. Not as the woman who helped, not as an extra set of hands. She introduced her as the stylist, the creator, the woman behind the whole showcase. Nia kept her face steady, but you could still feel the hit of it. The room turned toward her without a murmur. Evan and Claire were right there, but nobody was looking to them first. The woman who used to manage the edges had to say it out loud in public, and the room was already past needing convincing. They were just catching up. Nia didn't talk about taste. She moved people. She had an older church woman come through with a casserole carrier, and a young father come through with a folded stroller, and she showed them how the off-center bench and the cleared sightline let them pass, without bumping into anything. A foil-covered casserole dish, tote bags, and sensible church heels moved through the space without trouble. The room that had looked tight a minute ago suddenly opened. Easy, natural, exactly the way she said it would. People started murmuring before she even finished, because now they could feel the difference in their own bodies. That was the thing nobody could fake. Claire could copy a palette. Evan could sell the story, but Nia knew how a room had to work when real people had to live in it. And everybody standing there finally got to watch that truth happen right in front of them. By the time people finished drifting through the room, they weren't heading for Evan's pitch or Claire's smile. They were coming to Nia. One woman asked for her card. Then another asked what she'd charge for a small apartment. Someone wanted to know when she could come look at their place. A quiet line formed before anybody called it that. Evan and Claire stood a few feet back, polished and ready to talk, but nobody reached for either of them. Lindsay watched it with that tight little smile people get when they know the room has changed. And they are only now catching on. The feature scout was already taking notes. Donna saw strangers treating Nia's time like it was something limited and worth waiting for. Pens disappeared. Somebody balanced a paper plate of sliders on one wrist and held her place with the other. Nia took one card, then another, and kept breathing through the strange feeling of being wanted without being drained. Malik was the one who asked for the picture. He tugged at Nia's hand and pointed at her display, asking if they could get one family shot right there. Kendra gave the phone to a volunteer before anybody could default back to Nia holding it, and Donna did something Nia did not expect. She stepped in beside Malik and pulled Nia into the middle with her. No fuss, no speech, just bodies moving into the place where they belonged. The phone that used to end up in Nia's hand was in somebody else's hands now. Church women nearby smiled like the arrangement made perfect sense, and that made it hit harder, because it did. Malik stood untucked and proud in his wrinkled shirt, clutching a smudged cupcake wrapper, while a coat hung over the chair behind them. Nia had to blink hard and keep her shoulders steady. The old hurt came up fast, but for once, the family picture was not asking her to stand outside it. The feature scout asked for clean shots of Nia with the room, and that was all it took. She waved Claire and the others back without making a speech. The photographer adjusted. The title card with Nia's name got set in place, and suddenly the whole picture belonged to her. Nia stood alone under that sign, with a lit display behind her and everybody else stepping out of the shot. Claire's bright little smile had nowhere to land. Evan stayed at the edge, watching like somebody who just realized the story had moved on without him. Lindsay took one look and understood exactly what was being made in front of her. Not just a good picture, but the memory people would carry home. A scuffed step stool, an extra cord, somebody's forgotten cardigan, all sat just outside the cleaned-up frame. Nia kept her chin level, but being centered like that still felt new. Proud, yes, exposed to, and still, she didn't move. By the time most of the guests were gone, the curb was full of folded chairs, dead flowers, and leftover mess. Evan stepped into Nia's path with a new cut house key in his open hand, and told her she could come back, and they could. Do it right this time. He made it sound like an offer, like regret, like he was handing her something she had lost by mistake. Nia didn't take a step toward him, didn't touch the key, didn't look at it twice. A crew member loading chairs slowed just enough to hear the silence. That was the whole answer. Evan's smile thinned, and for the first time, he looked like a man holding something he couldn't use anymore. The key stayed in his palm. Nia's hand stayed at her sides, and whatever he thought he could still restore, he had to stand there and hold it alone. That night, Nia unlocked the door to her own apartment and carried the showcase flowers at first, then the placard with her name on it. She set both on the entry shelf beside her keys and turned on the warm lamp in the little room she had arranged for herself. The folded card table still pulled double duty as a desk. Takeout containers sat on the counter. A dish towel hung from the oven handle. Nothing about it was fancy, but it was hers. No family table waiting to rank her. No husband using her work like a shared resource. No one was there except her. Looking at a space that answered to her name, the relief came with grief under it, because getting here had cost plenty, but the grief was clean now. It didn't have to make room for erasure anymore. Nia stood there a moment with the quiet settling around her, and then she looked at the name on the shelf and the keys beside it like proof that she was finally living inside something that belonged to her. I got this in a direct message, and it stayed with me because it hit that exact place where being the dependable one starts getting treated like being disposable. What stuck with me most is how Nia didn't have to beg for her value. Once she stopped underwriting everybody else's comfort, she just got quiet, got clear, and the whole lot started wobbling. That kind of ending sits with you. If this one hit you too, leave a comment with the part that stayed with you, or send me the next story idea.